Welcome to Whispers of Crime. We've looked at some truly strange cases, but the material surrounding this one, it's just a stack of contradictions.
It really is. I mean, this is a story where every official answer just creates more questions.
So what's the core of it for anyone who hasn't heard of this case?
What if I told you a brilliant mathematician, a genius code breaker working for British intelligence, was found dead?
Okay.
He was naked, decomposing, and locked inside a padlocked sports bag in his own bathtub.
Wow.
And here's the impossible part, the key to the lock. It was trapped inside the bag with his body.
That opening image just defies all logic. A professional, a genius-level analyst found in a way that just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. And that is the central conflict of this entire case. The coroner, she looked at the evidence and ruled his death an unlawful killing, basically a murder.
Right.
But then the police, they formally closed the case, calling it most probably an accident.
An accident? How?
Well, that's the thing. Get this. His fingerprints weren't on the padlock. His DNA wasn't even on the zipper.
So he didn't touch it.
And forensic experts, professionals, they tried over 300 times to lock themselves in an identical bag. They failed every single attempt.
Every time.
The man at the center of this was Gareth Williams. He was 31, a Welsh code breaker for GCHQ, but he was on secondment to MI6.
It's a proper spy.
He was found on August 23, 2010, in his London flat. And critically, his body had been decomposing for 8 days in the summer heat before anyone even thought to check on him.
8 days.
So the questions are just huge, and they all contradict each other. Was he murdered by Russian intelligence? Was it a cover-up by his own agency, MI6? Or did a genius somehow, against all odds, accidentally lock himself in a bag he couldn't escape?
We have to start with the man himself. To understand the risk he was in, you have to understand just how brilliant he was.
Absolutely. We're talking about Gareth Williams, born September 26, 1978, in Anglesey, Wales. The files on him, they all confirm he had this kind of raw intellect that you just don't see every day.
It's genuinely hard to wrap your head around his intelligence. He wasn't just smart, he was operating on a completely different level.
He was a genuine child prodigy. I mean, the records show he was attending Bangor University part-time, studying mathematics while he was still in secondary school.
So teenager and university classes.
Younger than that. By the time he was just 13 years old, he had already passed his A-levels.
13.
In both maths and computer science. These are the big exams students in the UK take at 18 to get into university. He did them at 13.
That's just staggering. It makes the idea of him just forgetting to show up to work for a whole week feel even more unbelievable.
He wasn't a flake. Not at all. He graduated with a first-class degree in mathematics at 17. Then he finished a PhD at the University of Manchester.
So his academic career was just meteoric.
And that kind of excellence positioned him perfectly for the UK intelligence world. In 2001, he joined GCHQ.
GCHQ, that's the Government Communications Headquarters, right? Yeah. UK's version of the NSA, focusing on signals intelligence, cyber defense, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Breaking codes, cryptography, very technical, usually desk-bound work. But his talent was so obvious that it led to a pretty major shift. In the spring of 2009, he was seconded to the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6.
MI6, so that's the human intelligence side. Foreign operations, James Bond territory.
Right. And he wasn't just making tea. He was engaging in what the official files call active operational work.
That's a huge cultural leap, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the quiet academic world of GCHQ to the high-stakes, deeply political environment of MI6 in London. How did he handle that?
The records suggest he didn't handle it well at all. And this clash, between his very reserved, intensely private personality and the MI6 culture, it's a key factor in what happened later.
What was he like?
He was a keen cyclist, a walker, very dedicated to his work, but he really disliked the culture at MI6. He described it to his family as a rat race, full of flashcard competitions and post-work drinking culture.
It sounds like he saw it less as a place of serious national security and more like a competitive, high-pressure corporate office.
And he felt so out of place that he'd actually put in for a transfer. He was due to go back to GCHQ in September 2010.
So he had one foot out the door.
Which is crucial because it might explain why his visibility within the London office was so low. He wasn't really part of the team anymore.
Let's talk about the actual work he was doing, the mission. We need to understand the kind of threat level he was facing right before he died.
The threat level was potentially massive. Williams was a cyber warfare expert. His main project involved tracing international money laundering routes.
Okay, that's serious.
Very. He was liaising with U.S. agencies, like the NSA, and his focus was on organized crime groups, specifically Moscow-based mafia cells.
So he was stepping directly on the toes of extremely powerful transnational criminals, people who do not hesitate to eliminate threats.
And who often have state-level resources backing them.
Exactly.
There are even credible theories coming from defector sources that he might have been close to identifying a high-level Russian mole inside his old agency, GCHQ.
Wow. So his work tracing dirty money could have led him straight to the funding source for a foreign spy.
That's the theory. And when you combine his profound dislike for the MI6 environment, his withdrawal from that rat race, with the high-stakes work he was doing, you get a perfect storm.
He becomes an isolated target.
The sources strongly suggest his isolation contributed directly to the institutional failure that followed. He wasn't going out for drinks, he wasn't part of the social fabric, so when he didn't show up, nobody really noticed right away.
And that's what leads to the 7-day delay.
Which is just catastrophic from an investigative point of view. Let's lay out the timeline.
Okay.
The last confirmed sighting of Gareth Williams was on Sunday, August 15th, 2010. CCTV caught him shopping. Mundane stuff, cakes at Harrods, some steaks from a supermarket. He got back to his flat in Pimlico just after 3 p.m.
And this flat, it was owned by MI6, right? A safe house?
It was a security service safe house, yes, which implies a level of security that should have made an unmonitored death impossible.
The estimate is that he died in the early hours of Monday, August 16th, the day he was due back at work.
Correct. And here it is. The core institutional failure that poisons everything that comes after. MI6 failed to report him missing for 7 full days.
7 days. For an analyst working on intel that targeted Russian organized crime, an analyst who might have been about to unmask a mole, I can't get my head around that level of negligence.
The head of SIS, the top boss at MI6, he later issued an unreserved apology, called it a profound procedural breach. But the sheer length of the delay, it suggests either unbelievable incompetence or
what?
Or, as some have speculated, it was a deliberate choice, a choice to buy time for evidence to degrade.
His family believed that, didn't they?
Yeah.
They basically said that MI6's inaction turned a solvable crime into an impossible mystery.
That's the tragic reality of it. Let's look at what the police found when they finally broke down the door of that flat. The scene itself, it was immediately wrong.
Tell us about the staging. It's so bizarre.
So police find his naked, decomposing remains inside that large red North Face sports bag, and the bag is in the bathtub of the ensuite bathroom.
And the decomposition was bad.
Severely accelerated. Because of the strangest detail of all, despite it being the middle of August, the central heating in the flat was turned on full blast.
The heating was on full. In August. In London. That is not an accident. That's deliberate.
It screams of staging, doesn't it? It's a clear attempt to speed up decomposition. That heat profoundly complicated the postmortem, the toxicology. It ensured that any subtle, fast-acting poisons, the kind professionals use, would be long gone.
So let's talk about the bag itself, the paradox. The flat had no signs of forced entry, no struggle. He was described as immaculately tidy, and yet there he is, curled up in a fetal position inside a bag that was padlocked from the outside.
And here's the fact that just destroys the accidental solo experiment theory. The key to that padlock was found inside the bag, underneath his body.
Right. To be clear, for that to happen, he would have had to get in, zip the bag, somehow reach out, attach the padlock, lock it, and then pull the key back inside with him before dying.
Not only that, but the forensic examination was just staggering. No fingerprints found on the padlock, the bag itself, or even the rim of the bathtub.
So no prints from him or anyone else.
And crucially, no DNA from Williams himself on the padlock, the zipper, or the handle.
Hold on. The man who supposedly climbed in, zipped it up, and locked it, left zero physical trace of himself on the very things he would have had to touch. That's not just dexterous, that's impossible.
The chief investigating officer, Detective Chief Inspector Jackie Seebeyer, she admitted it was highly irregular. She said they found no prints on the tiled wall to suggest he'd braced himself to get in or that anyone else had. The scene was clinically clean.
And because of the heat and the delay, the autopsy couldn't determine a cause of death.
Precisely. They tested for over 100 substances. No alcohol, no common drugs, no common poisons. But the pathologists were clear. That 7-day delay could have let any sophisticated, fast-acting poison break down completely. The failure by MI6 essentially wiped the slate clean for a killer, if there was one.
Okay, let's just take a quick break here. When we come back, we need to talk about the institutional failures that went beyond just that 7-day delay.
The story gets even more complicated.
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment on this episode. Drop your review and rating. We'll be right back.
Okay, so we're back. We were just talking about the initial failure by MI6, the 7-day delay.
Right, which led to an apology from the head of MI6. But it goes deeper than that, doesn't it? The problem wasn't just the delay, it was the active mismanagement of the whole investigation that followed.
It was, and that's where the police's handling of the forensic evidence comes in. And it's a mess.
Tell us about this DNA contamination crisis.
This was a huge blow to the credibility of the investigation. It was being handled by the Metropolitan Police's Counterterrorism Unit, SO15, because of the national security angle.
Right, the top people.
And initially, they thought they had a breakthrough. They found what they believed were crucial DNA fragments on Williams's hand that belonged to an unknown third person.
The killer's DNA. That would have given the family and the investigators huge hope.
It gave them false hope. It turned out in February 2012 that this crucial lead was DNA from one of their own forensic officers who had worked the crime scene.
You're kidding me. The one piece of third-party DNA they found was their own guy's.
The chief investigating officer had to admit it was a financially and emotionally costly blunder. They had to unnecessarily DNA test about 60 people, friends, colleagues, against a sample that was completely meaningless.
That's not just a mistake, that's profound incompetence. And from the unit that's supposed to be handling the most sensitive cases in the country, it just compounds the failures of MI6.
And you start to see how the line between incompetence and deliberate obstruction gets very blurry. Because MI6 itself was accused of obstruction. There were immediate and damning allegations that they were actively controlling the investigation by withholding key evidence.
What exactly did they hold back?
The coroner, a Dr. Fiona Wilcox, she later came out and criticized the police for failing to tell the lead investigator about the existence of 9 memory sticks and another hold-all that were found in Williams's office at MI6 headquarters.
Wait. MI6 finds 9 memory sticks belonging to their dead analyst who was working on Russian finance, and they don't immediately hand them over to the police who are investigating his highly suspicious death.
They did not.
That suggests their priority was something other than solving the crime.
It absolutely suggests they were trying to control the narrative. On top of that, the police only got access to his personnel files, the files that could have shown security breaches or operational risks after the inquest had officially ended.
It really feels like the intelligence community was just in damage control mode. It was about containing sensitive information, not about getting to the truth.
That is the main takeaway from this phase. Institutional secrecy was the #1 priority. The files even detail a secret meeting between the head of MI6, Sir John Sars, and the police commissioner to discuss how the investigation should be handled.
So the question at the top wasn't who killed Gareth Williams, it was how do we stop his death from becoming a political disaster?
Precisely. And this climate of secrecy meant that even years later, modern forensic techniques have found nothing. A review in 2024 using the latest DNA tech on the bag, the padlock, everything. It concluded no new third-party DNA could be found.
Which doesn't prove it was an accident. It just proves that the initial degradation of evidence was successful.
Correct. But the police later used that lack of DNA to support their non-foul play conclusion. They argued that since they couldn't find anyone else's DNA, he must have been alone.
Which brings us to the absolute core of this case, the central physical contradiction of it all, the padlock paradox.
This is it. This is where the physics of the crime scene and the legal process collide. The coroner said it herself. Whether Williams was alive inside the bag and locked it himself was, quote, at the very heart of this inquiry.
If the answer is no, it's murder. If the answer is yes, it's a 1 in a billion accident.
And the initial expert findings, the ones the coroner relied on in 2012, they suggested the feat was physically impossible.
Completely impassable.
2 different experts, they tried to replicate it. They got an identical red North Face bag, and they tried to lock themselves inside. They made around 400 attempts. They failed every single time. One of the experts, Peter Falding, he's a specialist in confined spaces, he said the maneuver required too much strength and dexterity. He said it would have been too difficult for even Houdini.
400 attempts, and these are professionals. They failed every time. Let's just break down why it's so hard. You're in a fetal position, so you have no leverage. You have to pull the zip tight, then attach the padlock to the outside loop, all while you can barely move.
The main problem is the limited range of motion. How your shoulder and elbow joints can move when your body is curled up. To pull a zipper shut, you really need to pull from the outside. To secure a padlock like that, which needs 2 hands or incredible dexterity, you need space.
And he was naked and in a bathtub.
Doing it from the inside, fighting the friction of the bag material, it's just biologically and mechanically implausible. And that's before you even consider the lack of his own fingerprints or DNA.
Right. If he struggled that much to do it, his palm prints, his fingerprints, they would have been all over the zipper, the padlock, the rim of the bath he was using for support.
The hard forensic facts just didn't support it, which led the coroner to a very simple conclusion. If the logistics are impossible, then someone else must have locked the bag, a third party.
But the Metropolitan Police then launched their own investigation to specifically counter that finding, didn't they? How did they refute the experts who failed 400 times?
They shifted the goalposts. They moved the focus from what was plausible to what was theoretically possible. They did their own selective reconstructions. They used footage of a retired Army sergeant and a journalist successfully locking themselves in a similar holdall.
Hold on. A similar bag, not an identical one, and under perfect conditions with people who were focused only on succeeding. And they used that to dismiss the findings of forensic experts.
It's narrative engineering. The police basically argued that if just one person could do it, then it was theoretically possible. And in their view, that made it more probable that Williams died by accident. It just sidestepped all the inconvenient facts.
The lack of forensics, the physical constraints. What about the physiological reality? I mean, even if he got inside and started to lock it, how long would he have before he passed out?
The pathologists agreed he was probably alive when he got into the bag. But one of them stated that once the bag was sealed, he would have been overcome by hypercapnia very quickly.
What's that?
It's the buildup of carbon dioxide in the blood. The oxygen runs out and your own breath becomes poisonous.
How quickly are we talking?
The estimate was as short as 2 or 3 minutes before he would be incapacitated.
2 to 3 minutes. To perform a complex, multi-step maneuver that Houdini couldn't do, from a fetal position, while your body is starving for oxygen, the time limit alone makes the accident theory seem ridiculous.
It requires an unbelievable combination of factors. Sustained consciousness, extreme dexterity, total control, all while in severe distress. This deep, deep contradiction is what forces us to look at the 2 competing motives.
On one side, you have the state-level spy threat, which fits the staging and the destroyed evidence. And on the other, you have the story of a private, tragic accident, which the police used to close the case.
Let's start with the espionage threat. As we said, Williams was tracing money laundering routes used by Moscow-based organized crime. His work put him right in the path of foreign intelligence services.
And how credible are the claims of actual Russian involvement?
They gained a lot of weight after the inquest. His death is one of 14 that U.S. intelligence reportedly highlighted as potentially having Russian involvement. So it's seen as part of a pattern of eliminations on UK soil.
So it's not just a one-off incident. It's potentially part of a wider, silent conflict that U.S. intelligence was tracking.
Exactly. And then specific allegations came out in 2015 from a man named Boris Karpichkov, a former KGB agent who defected. Karpichkov claimed that his sources in Russia said the SVR, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, murdered Williams.
The SVR, Russia's external spy agency. Why would they target a junior analyst?
The allegation was twofold. First, that the SVR had tried to blackmail or compromise Williams to turn him into a double agent, and he refused. And second, that he was getting close to identifying a Kremlin mole inside GCHQ, a very valuable asset.
So killing him would protect the mole and punish his refusal to cooperate.
And that motive fits the crime scene perfectly. If it was a professional SVR job, they would ensure it was a clean kill. The suggested method of death, an untraceable poison, maybe introduced through the ear, is classic tradecraft. It's designed to beat an autopsy. Combine that with the heat to speed up decomposition, and you have a perfect, sophisticated murder. No struggle, no forced entry, and a scene deliberately staged to look bizarre and personal.
Bizarre and personal. That brings us to the counter story, the one the police relied on, the tragic, private misadventure.
The police investigation leaned very heavily on evidence of Williams' secret life to support their accident theory. They argued he died during a solo, high-risk sexual practice or an escapology experiment that went wrong. They suggested he had an interest in claustrophilia.
The desire for confinement, What specific evidence did they have for this?
Investigators found a lot of women's designer clothing in his flat, about 20 to 25,000 pounds worth. Dresses, shoes, wigs, all described as pristine. They also noted that he had visited bondage and sadomasochism websites.
Was this, a constant thing?
Right.
Or just a passing interest?
The coroner was very clear on this. She noted his internet activity was infrequent. It didn't indicate some kind of all-consuming obsession, but the investigators strategically highlighted one specific story.
What was that?
3 years earlier, when he was working in Cheltenham, Williams was found tied to his bedpost, screaming for help. He later told the person who found him that he was just seeing if he could get free.
So that one incident gives the police a hook. They can argue, here's a man interested in extreme confinement who experimented with self-bondage before, and he just took it one step too far.
That is the crucial insight here. You have to ask yourself, did the police and MI6 deliberately focus on the sensational details of his private life, the clothes, the alleged fetish to distract everyone?
It's a classic deflection, isn't it? You
Yeah.
create this plausible, non-political, and slightly embarrassing story, a tragic sexual accident, and suddenly no one's talking about MI6 accountability or Russian assassins. The whole conversation shifts.
And it neutralizes the immense pressure for a diplomatically explosive murder investigation. The coroner herself was very critical of how these private details were leaked to the press. She suggested it could have been an attempt by some third party to manipulate the evidence.
And she explicitly rejected the idea that it was related to his cause of death.
She did. Which brings us to the final part of this, the battle of the verdicts. This fundamental conflict between what a court of law found and what the police decided to close the case with.
It's so jarring.
In May 2012, after hearing all this evidence, the coroner, Dr. Fiona Wilcox, delivered her official verdict. She concluded that Gareth Williams was, quote, unlawfully killed by suffocation and that his death was, quote, unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated.
So a judge looks at all the facts and says it's murder, based on the impossible logistics and the institutional failures.
She sided completely with the experts who said the self-locking was impossible. She rejected the suicide theory, the sex game theory, all of it. She stated she was satisfied that a third party put that bag in the bath and locked it. The judicial inquiry found foul play, period.
So how did the police, an executive law enforcement agency, just override a judicial finding of murder?
After the coroner's verdict, the Met Police launched a huge reinvestigation. They focus heavily on their own reconstructions. And in November 2013, a deputy assistant commissioner named Martin Hewitt announced their conclusion. The death was most probably an accident.
On what grounds? How could they possibly justify that reversal, given the evidence?
Hewitt argued that because of their reexamination and the lack of any external DNA, it was more probable that Williams acted alone. He also said he had not been misled by the intelligence services and that there was no evidence to support the theory that Gareth's death was in any way related to his work.
It sounds like the police were prioritizing the absence of proof, which was guaranteed by the 7-day delay and the heat over the positive proof of impossibility from the experts who tried 400 times.
That is the contradiction, precisely. Hewitt even admitted that they couldn't be certain. He conceded that for both theories, the accident and the murder, there were, quote, evidential contradictions and gaps in our understanding, but they closed it anyway.
And the family, they must have been devastated. Their hopes were raised by the coroner, only for the police to just erase a finding of murder.
They remain profoundly disappointed with the police. They maintain that the coroner's verdict, a criminally mediated act, is the only one that fits the facts. They still believe an unknown third party, someone from some agency specializing in the dark arts, was involved.
So this is where it all stands today. An unsolved case defined by this radical contradiction. Brilliant man found in an impossible situation, 7 days of institutional silence, a judicial finding of murder, and a police closure based on a theory that defies logic.
And remember, Gareth Williams was tracing the money used by organized crime and potential foreign spies. The willingness of the establishment to accept this profound ambiguity, to rely on the theoretical possibility of a fatal, complex, self-inflicted accident, it suggests a very calculated priority.
They avoided a politically devastating international investigation into a professional assassination on British soil. By immediately shifting the focus to his private life and dismissing the logistical impossibility, the security state successfully dodged accountability.
And in the world of intelligence, sometimes that kind of deflection is the clearest sign of professional involvement there is. We may never know for sure if Gareth Williams was killed by a foreign power or if he died in a tragic private experiment. But the way his death was handled guarantees that the suspicion will always be there, raising painful questions about who the security services really serve, the state or the people who work for it.
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and other podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment. We want to hear your thoughts on this case.
The questions in this case are profound. If you hold any relevant, unreleased information about the death of Gareth Williams, if you know anything about the mysterious people seen near his flat or what was on those 9 memory sticks, we encourage you to contact the authorities. His family, above all, deserves the truth. Thanks for joining us.